They left Reno just after 3 p.m. Jeremy Bennett, 40, had packed the SUV with military precision. His old habits from the Army Reserve never quite left him. Melissa, his wife of 11 years, sat up front with a tattered road atlas on her lap, though they had a Garmin GPS mounted on the dash. Ava, their 6-year-old daughter, sat in the back, humming tunelessly while hugging her pink stuffed rabbit. Beside her, Liam, 9, flipped through his dinosaur picture book, narrating each page to no one in particular. They were on their way to Caliente, a quiet town near the Nevada-Utah border where Melissa's cousin owned a ranch and had invited them to stay for a few days. They wanted a break, some space, and the desert promised both. They took Highway 50 East, the so-called loneliest road in America. For the Bennetts, that was the appeal. Around 6:40 p.m., they passed a rusted sign barely clinging to a wooden post. No services next 88 miles. Travel prepared. Jeremy slowed down, glanced at Melissa. Still good on fuel? She checked the gauge. 3/4. We're fine. The kids had dozed off in the back. The desert stretched endlessly around them. Waves of ochre and orange, sun-stained rock, and the occasional scraggly brush. At 7:22 p.m., Melissa made a call to her mother in Fresno. "Just letting you know we're on schedule," she said. "Somewhere near Eerie, I think. No reception in a bit, probably." She paused, then laughed softly. "No, Mom, nobody's out here. It's just us and the sand." The call dropped mid-laugh. That was the last anyone heard from Melissa Bennett. 2 days later, her mother called local authorities after repeated voicemails went unanswered. The cousin in Caliente confirmed. They never showed up. The Nevada Highway Patrol launched a search. Their route was obvious, Highway 50 toward Caliente, but somewhere along that stretch, they had vanished. Search teams combed through miles of open desert, using helicopters, drones, ground teams with ATVs. There was nothing. No skid marks, no crash site, no signs of distress, just sand. Jeremy's brother flew in from Colorado. He told investigators Jeremy was the cautious type, not the kind to take detours or drive into uncertainty. If he was running low on fuel, he said, he'd rather sleep in the car than take a side road. But by day 6 of the search, suspicion began to creep in. Investigators pulled Jeremy's military record, 2 tours in Iraq, no disciplinary issues, but a note in a medical file caught a detective's attention. PTSD, mild, claustrophobia under stress. Could he have snapped? Someone asked quietly. No one wanted to say it aloud. Not yet. Still, without any trace of the vehicle or the family, whispers turned into theories. One highway camera near Eureka, Nevada, had caught a fleeting image of what might have been their SUV, time-stamped 7:46 p.m. on the night they disappeared. The headlights veered slightly off the road, toward a barely visible dirt path. Search crews expanded their radius, targeting side roads, abandoned mining trails, and forgotten military testing zones that dot Nevada's interior like scars. But the desert is good at hiding things. Months passed, then years. No bodies, no vehicle, no trace. The Bennett family was eventually declared legally deceased in 2013. Case closed, at least until a drone flew over Sandmouth Dunes in August 2023, 17 years later, and caught the corner of something metal, half buried in the sand. A shape that shouldn't have been there, a shape with edges too clean for a rock, a shape exactly the size of an SUV roof. August 2023. Tyler Madsen, 34, had no idea what he was about to uncover. He was a weekend hiker, a tech geek who loved flying drones over weird terrain and uploading eerie footage to his small YouTube channel. That Saturday, he chose the Sandmouth Dunes, a desolate stretch outside Tonopah, Nevada. Known more for off-roaders and rattlesnakes than tourists. The wind was brutal that day, blowing hot and fast like a furnace exhaling. Tyler launched his DJI drone and let it climb. He didn't expect to see much, but at 312 feet, something caught his eye. A sharp, rectangular edge beneath the dunes, partially exposed like a buried coffin, barely visible where the wind had scoured away the surface layer of sand. The sun reflected off metal. He zoomed in, circled the shape, and marked the coordinates. Then he posted a 40-second clip titled, "Something Buried Deep in Nevada Desert?" It got 700 views in the first hour. One of them was an off-duty BLM ranger named Danielle Price. Danielle wasn't the type to chase conspiracy theories, but something about the shape nagged at her. She'd read the Bennett file years ago when she interned in Reno. She froze the drone footage at frame 023. That wasn't just a rectangle. That was a roof rack. Within 72 hours, a joint team from the Nevada State Police and the Bureau of Land Management arrived at the coordinates. A mobile forensic unit and a dig team followed. They pitched tents and began the slow, careful process of excavation. By day 2, they hit metal. The sand around it was packed tight from years of wind compression. They had to dig with hand tools to avoid damaging what was underneath. On day 4, they cleared enough of the roof to identify the make. A silver 2004 Toyota Sequoia. Registration confirmed it. Jeremy Bennett's SUV. It had been buried beneath 10 feet of sand for 17 years, preserved like an insect in amber. But what they found inside only deepened the mystery. The interior was perfectly sealed. No signs of trauma, no bullet holes, no fire, no shattered windows. Inside were 4 neatly buckled seatbelts, all of them empty. On the back seat, Ava's stuffed rabbit, faded but intact. A Ziploc bag of snacks, a melted, crumbled Walkman. In the glove box, Melissa's journal. Her handwriting stopped abruptly on the last page, mid-sentence. It read, "Something's out there. Liam keeps." And then nothing. The SUV's keys were still in the ignition. On the dashboard, placed neatly above the air vent, was a single sheet of paper folded in half. A child's drawing, 5 stick figures, 4 smiling. The 5th, in black crayon, had no face, and its arms were too long. The forensic team triple-checked for human remains. Nothing. No blood. No bones, no trace DNA, not even a fingerprint that didn't belong to the Bennett family. The SUV was removed piece by piece and transported to a secure evidence lab in Reno. Detectives reopened the case, and soon the old rumors began to bubble back up. One local, a gas station owner named Donnie McCrae, called the hotline. He remembered something odd. "Back in '06, he said, "I saw that SUV. Swear I did. Pulled in just before dusk. The man looked tired. The kids were sleeping. But the woman—" He paused. "She looked nervous." Nervous how? "She kept looking in the rearview mirror like someone was following them." Donnie tried to sell them gas. Jeremy said no. They had enough. But the weirdest part, Donnie added, was the back window. It was fogged up, like someone had breathed on it. He swore he saw a small handprint, pressed from the outside. Detective Clara Ridge had just returned from medical leave when the Bennett case reopened. She didn't know why she felt drawn to it. Maybe because it was cold, unsolved, and crawling with shadows. The kind of case that swallows good detectives whole. But the moment she saw the photo of the child's drawing on the dashboard, 5 figures, not 4, she felt it in her gut. This wasn't just a missing persons case. This was something else. She requested the full archive, box after box of dust-covered files from 2006, witness statements, GPS logs, dead-end tips from psychic hotlines, all of it. But one thing stood out. A thin manila folder labeled simply, ALT route, Jeremy's last GPS ping. In the weeks following the Bennett's disappearance, investigators had tried to trace the vehicle's route using a GPS data chip from the Sequoia's onboard system. Back in 2006, it was a crude setup, logged breadcrumbs every 10 minutes if a signal was available. One data point pinged just after 7:40 p.m. on the night they vanished. Far from Highway 50, it was on a dirt trail known only by locals as Old Crystal Pass, an unmarked military access road decommissioned in the 1980s and technically no longer on public maps. No one could explain why Jeremy would turn off the main road. There were no signs, no cell phone coverage, no lights, just a narrow, uneven path winding deep into the desert basin. Back then, the theory had been that Jeremy took a wrong turn or panicked when low on gas, but Ridge didn't buy it. Jeremy had military training. He would have known the risks of off-grid travel at dusk, especially with kids. Something or someone made him turn. She pulled surveillance records from that region around the time of disappearance. Most of the traffic cameras were offline, but one drone image, taken days later by a geological survey team, showed faint, overlapping tire marks at the mouth of Old Crystal Pass. More than one vehicle, 2 tracks, same direction, one set heavier than the other. Ridge made a note. She returned to the SUV, now secured in a lab garage under police supervision. The team had cataloged all items, but she asked to see the drawing again, the one from the dashboard. She held it under a UV light. At first, nothing. Then, faint smudges near the 5th figure. Black crayon had been pressed over something, like someone was trying to hide earlier markings. She requested chemical lifting and imaging. A few hours later, the results came in. Under the black scribble was an earlier drawing of the same figure, but this version had eyes, and its mouth was open, drawn in jagged, frantic lines. It looked like it was screaming. Ridge drove to the last known stop, the old gas station outside Eerie, where Donnie McCrae had spotted the Bennetts. He remembered more than she expected. "She came in with the little girl," he said, referring to Melissa and Ava. "Bought water, some fruit snacks, and duct tape. I asked if she was all right. She just smiled and said, 'He's tired, we all are.'" "He?" Ridge asked. "I figured she meant the husband." "Did you see the husband?" Donnie paused. "Not clearly. He stayed in the SUV." Then he frowned. "But I remember something else. The girl, Ava, she stared at the ice freezer like she was trying to say something. Then she whispered to her mom, 'He's not real, right?'" Ridge leaned in. "What did Melissa say?" Donnie's voice dropped. "She said, 'Don't say that out loud.'" That night, Ridge studied satellite photos of the region near Crystal Pass. She zoomed in. Roughly 6 miles from where the SUV was buried, the sand broke into uneven patterns, as if something below had settled and collapsed. A shallow depression, almost like a sinkhole, but in the center, a strange discoloration. A faint circle burned into the desert. She called in a field team and requested backup because now the case wasn't just about a missing family. It was about whatever came with them. The heat was unbearable, even by Nevada standards. Detective Clara Ridge wiped the sweat from her brow as the SUV bounced across the unmarked trail. The road, if it could be called that, was barely more than 2 worn tire tracks, swallowed by dunes and silence. The only sounds were wind and the faint whir of the Bureau drone circling above. Ahead, the terrain dipped. The satellite image hadn't lied. The depression in the sand was real, wider than it had looked from the air, about 30 feet across, shallow and circular, like something had pressed down from above or below. The ground there was different, dry, cracked, the sand discolored with a pale gray film, and right in the center, a perfect ring burned into the earth. A solid outline 10 feet in diameter, charred and glassy like lightning had struck it 1,000 times. But there were no burn marks around it, no source, just the circle. The forensic team set up perimeter flags and began scanning with ground-penetrating radar. It didn't take long. At a depth of approximately 6 feet, they detected metal, flat and consistent, with hard edges, not rock, something man-made, possibly a structure or a container. But no military base was ever reported here. No facility, no testing ground, at least not on any record Ridge could find. She stepped back and lit a cigarette she wasn't supposed to smoke. A rookie approached from the perimeter. "Ma'am, you should see this." A few yards west of the circle, partially hidden beneath brush and hardened soil, they'd found the remains of a campfire, old, buried, nearly erased by time. Beside it, a melted plastic water bottle, the corner of a blanket, and bones. Small ones. Animal, most likely, but brittle and charred, scattered as if something had disturbed the sight. Ridge crouched, eyeing the scene. "What do you see?" the rookie asked. She pointed at a semicircle of rocks around the fire pit. Some were smooth river stones, others jagged and dark. "They didn't come from this desert," she said quietly. "Someone brought these." "Why?" "I don't know. But look." She motioned to the arrangement. The stones weren't random, not a circle for heat, but a pattern, a kind of star or maybe a symbol, something deliberate. The next morning, Ridge returned to the evidence lab in Reno. The child's drawing had been reanalyzed. The paper was cheap, hotel notepad stock. Nothing unusual except for the carbon layer behind the black crayon, faint ridges from an earlier sketch. Using digital enhancement, they pulled an image from beneath. It wasn't stick figures. It was a map, crude, drawn by a child's hand, but unmistakable. 4 intersecting lines leading to a central point. One of them traced a curve, the outline of what looked like dunes. Ridge overlaid it on the satellite view of Sandmouth. The lines matched. The center of the drawing aligned with the burned circle, which meant the child, Ava or Liam, had seen it. Or worse, been there. Later that afternoon, an unexpected call came in. A woman claiming to be a former employee of the Nevada Desert Research Institute who insisted she couldn't talk long. Her voice trembled. She refused to give her real name, but her warning was clear. "You need to stop digging near Crystal Pass. That area was sealed for a reason. Back in '92, we tested sonic disruption out there, deep earth monitoring. But something came through. Not a gas pocket, not seismic, something else." Ridge pressed for more. The woman hung up after whispering one final sentence. "The desert doesn't forget what you bury in it. Sometimes it gives it back." Changed. That night, Ridge sat alone in her apartment, staring at the sketch pulled from the drawing. The 5th figure, the black one, its arms extended unnaturally long, reaching toward the others. As if it wasn't just watching, it was leading them. The forensic team found it sealed in a soft blue case beneath the driver's seat, still zipped, still dry. Inside was a Canon Mini DV camcorder, 2005 model. Outdated but functional, Melissa Bennett's name was etched in faded Sharpie on the battery compartment. Along with it, 4 cassettes, 3 labeled with dates, 1 marked simply, Home. Detective Clara Ridge watched the footage alone in the evidence lab. They had transferred the tapes to digital, frame by frame. She braced herself. She'd seen body cams from crime scenes, cartel footage, war clips. But somehow, this was worse, because it started so normal. The first few clips were innocent. Jeremy filming the kids playing in a motel pool. Melissa dancing with Ava on the hotel bed. Liam pretending to be a dinosaur, roaring at the camera while eating cereal. Melissa laughing. Jeremy saying, "Save that for college." Blackmail material. Then, footage from the drive. The sun low over the Nevada hills, casting long shadows across the road. The kids asleep in the back seat. Jeremy's voice narrating, "Somewhere near Eureka. God, it's quiet out here." Melissa was holding the camera. You could hear her whisper, "This place feels empty." At first, Ridge thought it was just a mother's tired comment. But then came the clip from 7:31 p.m. The camcorder sat on the dash, pointed forward. They had pulled off the highway. The camera shook as the SUV rumbled over gravel. Jeremy said, "It's a shortcut. Adds 20 miles but shaves off time on the climb." Melissa's voice, "It's not on the map." Jeremy, "Wasn't on the GPS either. But there's a trail. I see the marks." Then something odd. A brief flicker. The camera auto-focused. And for a split second, a figure appeared on the screen, standing beside the dirt road. Far ahead. Barely visible. Ridge paused the video. Zoomed in. It wasn't clear. But it wasn't a coyote. And it wasn't human. The limbs looked off. Too thin. Too long. Like it was bent the wrong way. Then it was gone. The video kept rolling. Jeremy said, "Did you see that?" Melissa, "Keep driving." Later, in a night vision clip, they were stopped at a makeshift camp. Melissa sat on the hood of the SUV, looking down at something. The wind howled. Liam's voice from behind the camera, "It followed us. I saw it again." Melissa turned sharply. "Liam, don't say that in front of your sister." "Can't you see it?" he asked. Then Ava's tiny voice, barely audible, "It's the same thing from my dreams." The camera dropped for a moment. Someone, likely Jeremy, picked it up again. The lens focused on the dunes beyond their campsite. Just wind, sand, sky. Then came the whisper, faint, over the audio. It didn't belong to anyone in the family. A single word, hungry. Ridge paused the video, rewound it, played it again with noise filtering. Yes, definitely a whisper, and it was right next to the microphone. She sat back in her chair. Her hands were shaking. The last tape labeled Home was mostly footage from before the trip. Birthdays, Christmas mornings, a pillow fort in the living room. But the final clip had no timestamp. It showed Melissa in the passenger seat, holding the camera, filming the desert through the window. Jeremy's voice, "We'll be there in an hour." Melissa whispered into the mic, almost too quietly to catch, "I don't think we're bringing them back." Ridge leaned forward, staring at the screen. Not it. Them. That night, she filed a request for every missing persons report along Crystal Pass between 1980 and 2006. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the Bennetts weren't the first family to find something out there, and they might not be the last. By Thursday, the team had permission to dig. The circular burn pattern in the desert was now surrounded by orange flags, field cameras, and sensor nodes. The ground-penetrating radar had picked up something unusually large and rectangular beneath the sand. Too symmetrical to be natural. Whatever it was, it lay beneath 6 feet of packed earth inside the charred ring. Ridge arrived on site just after dawn. The air was thick with dust and tension. Sergeant Kyle Renner, a seasoned field ops officer, stood near the excavation perimeter, arms crossed. He hadn't said much all morning. "Something wrong?" Ridge asked. He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "When you stand in that circle, it's too quiet. The wind doesn't blow inside it." Ridge glanced toward the ring. The dust outside swirled like it always did in the desert, but inside the boundary, still. Dead still. By mid-morning, the crew had reached the object. A rusted metal hatch, industrial, heavy, corroded by time and heat. No markings, no lock, just a handle worn smooth. They set up lighting and lowered a snake camera through the seam. At first, nothing but black. Then shapes began to emerge. A chamber, cement walls, scorched, and in the center, a chair bolted to the floor, the kind you'd find in a psychiatric ward or an interrogation room. Restraints dangled from both arms. The chamber was not on any geological map, and it wasn't natural. Renner volunteered to go down. Strapped with a harness and a headset, he descended into the pit with 2 officers standing by. The temperature inside dropped sharply, 20 degrees colder than the surface. His flashlight flickered. "Something's carved into the walls," Renner said over the radio. "The symbols, lots of them." "Describe," Ridge said. "They look ancient, maybe native, but wrong, twisted." "Anything else?" A long pause, then, "There's hair on the chair. Human, long, brown. It's fresh." The line crackled. Renner froze. "Wait. What is it? I hear something. Movement." Then silence. The rope yanked taut. The officers above screamed and pulled hard. Seconds later, Renner surfaced, gasping and flailing, his eyes wide with raw panic. "Shut it. Shut it now," he screamed. "There's something down there. It's under the floor." He collapsed on the sand, trembling. His pupils were blown wide, skin pale and drenched in sweat. Ridge kneeled beside him. "What did you see?" Renner's voice was barely a whisper. "Eyes. Too many eyes. And they weren't human." They sealed the hatch immediately, bolted it shut, and poured concrete over the entire pit. Officially, they recorded it as an unstable Cold War relic. Unofficially, Ridge ordered the footage destroyed, but not before she kept a single frame from the snake cam, a low-resolution still of the wall near the chair. There was a child's handprint in soot, too small to be Jeremy or Melissa's, too recent to be 17 years old. That night, Renner was placed on psychiatric leave. He was found the next morning in his motel room, curled in the bathtub with the shower running, eyes wide open, muttering the same words over and over. It remembers us. It remembers us. It remembers us. Ridge drove back to Reno with a sick feeling in her chest. Later that night, she reviewed the Bennett family's recovered belongings once more. Inside Ava's stuffed rabbit, gently unstitched by a lab tech, was a folded note, drawn in crayon, 5 figures again. But now 3 were crossed out, and next to the 5th black figure was a 6th, smaller, new. Detective Clara Ridge had seen death, but not like this. Not repetition, not history rhyming with itself in whispers and blood. She spent 3 straight days in the records room, poring over handwritten ledgers, microfilm reels, forgotten case files, and dusty printouts from agencies that no longer existed. What she found made her chest tighten. The Bennett family hadn't been the first to vanish near Crystal Pass. Not even close. 1963. A couple named Darnell and Eve Whitmore went missing with their 2 sons while driving from Salt Lake City to Fresno. Their Plymouth Fury was found months later, stripped by sand, windshield cracked from the inside. No bodies, no clues. Their 5-year-old's coloring book was still in the back seat. 1 page had been torn out, found wedged in the glove box. A crayon sketch, 5 people holding hands, with a black shadow behind them. 1980. 2 backpackers reported seeing a figure with bent legs and no face, standing still atop a dune near the same region. They abandoned their hike and drove straight to a sheriff's office in Tonopah. 1 refused to ever return to the desert. No follow-up was ever conducted. 1992. A geophysics team from the Nevada Desert Research Institute recorded strange subterranean vibrations at Crystal Pass during a soil test. Frequencies didn't match anything natural. No fault line activity, no volcanic behavior. The lead technician, Alan Stokes, vanished from his hotel room a week later. His last note, scrawled on the back of a motel receipt, read, "It doesn't live under us. It lives through us." Ridge laid out all the evidence on a corkboard in her office. Disappearances every 14 to 17 years, always within a 10-mile radius of the Crystal Pass Basin. Always families, always 1 child among them under the age of 10. Always at least 1 artistic artifact left behind. A drawing, a sketch, a child's imagination trying to explain the unseeable. The Bennett case wasn't random. It was scheduled. She met with Dr. Ian Harrow, a retired professor of folklore and native spiritual anthropology from UNLV. She showed him a copy of the symbols found etched in the chamber walls below the hatch. He froze. "These aren't tribal," he said flatly. "Not in the way you're thinking." "Then what are they?" "They're mimicry. Someone or something wanted us to think they were tribal." "Why?" Harrow studied the symbols more closely. "Because they were meant to ward off something. But they're wrong. Like a child copying the letters of a language they don't understand." He pointed to 1 mark, a circle with a slash and 7 strokes radiating outward. "That's a memory mark from old desert traditions. It's not a warning. It's a binding." "Binding what?" Ridge asked. Harrow looked at her. "You don't want to know." That evening, she received a call from the lab. Ava Bennett's stuffed rabbit had been scanned for trace materials, along with dust, synthetic fibers, and faded food crumbs. They found organic particulates inside the stuffing, specifically skin cells from a human child under 10 years old, but only 1 matched Ava's DNA. The other? Unknown. No match in any federal, medical, or criminal database. And the twist? The age estimate on the second sample wasn't 17 years old. It was fresh. 2 years, max. That night, Ridge stared at the drawing recovered from the rabbit again. 6 stick figures. The black one in the middle, its arms outstretched. The 6th, tiny, clutched in one arm, like it had taken it. Or worse, like it had made it. The drawing had haunted Sarah Mitchell ever since she'd first seen it. 5 stick figures, not 4. One large figure stood a bit to the side, arms long and slightly curved, like hooks. The child who drew it, likely Ava, had scribbled it in pink crayon and taped it to the dash with care. But who was the 5th figure? Agent Mitchell and archaeologist Dr. Lyle revisited the Bennett SUV. Forensics had already gone over it, but there was one part left untouched due to its fragility: the rear floorboard beneath the carpet. Carefully, they peeled it back. Beneath it, they found something that hadn't been on any report: a small trap door built into the SUV's body, not part of the manufacturer's design. Someone had modified the vehicle. Inside the hidden compartment were 4 things: a half-burned Polaroid of the family, but with a tall shadow looming in the background, a matchbox from a now demolished diner called Eloise's Stop, a brass key labeled Sundial Motel, Room 5, and a tiny cracked voice recorder. Sarah hit play. The recording started with wind, then Jeremy's voice. "Not supposed to be here, but Melissa said she saw someone out in the dunes. Liam's crying now. We're staying in the car." Then Melissa's voice, tense, whispered, "I saw 5 sets of prints, Jeremy. 5. Jeremy responded shakily, "But there's 4 of us." Then static, then a faint sound, metal scraping on metal, and finally a child's voice. "He's here again, the tall man." Click. Sarah and Lyle looked at each other, both rattled. They didn't know what they were chasing anymore. A man, a myth, a mirage in the sand. They headed to the Sundial Motel. Room 5 no longer existed. The entire row had been bulldozed in 2012. But the manager, a heavy-set man named Hank, remembered the Bennetts. "I was a dishwasher back then," he said. "I remember them 'cause they checked in and out twice, like they forgot something or changed their minds. Creeped me out, honestly." "What do you mean? They didn't look right when they came back? Pale, shaky. The little girl kept looking over her shoulder." Sarah showed him the matchbox. He squinted. "Eloise's Stop. That place was across from us, run down and full of old weirdos. It burned down around the same time they vanished. Maybe earlier." Lyle asked, "Anyone stay in room 5 recently?" "Nope. We sealed it years ago. Still got the original lock on it." They used the brass key. The door groaned open into stale air and peeling wallpaper. Dust coated everything except for the nightstand. A single item sat on top. Another drawing, same crayon, same stick figures, but this time only 3 stood upright. One was scribbled out completely. The 5th figure. Now it had wings. Sarah stared at it, her breath catching in her throat. "What does this mean?" Lyle whispered. Sarah turned to him, voice barely audible. "Whatever happened to the Bennetts didn't end in the desert. It followed them. Into town. Into this room. And maybe it's still not over." From outside, a gust of desert wind slammed the door shut behind them. And somewhere, deep beneath the dunes, the sand shifted again. The night air in Tonopah was colder than expected. Detective Ridge and Dr. Lyle sat in the dim motel room, the only light coming from the flickering screen of a laptop. They had managed to recover surveillance footage from a gas station security camera near Crystal Pass, a rare window into the Bennett's last hours. The footage was grainy but chilling. At 7:42 p.m., the Bennett SUV pulled off the highway and onto the dirt trail. The camera caught the family in the vehicle, Jeremy driving, Melissa in the passenger seat, Ava and Liam in the back. All appeared calm, if tired. Then, at 7:45 p.m., something changed. A dark figure appeared on the side of the road, partially obscured by shadows. It moved strangely, too fluid, too quick. Its limbs bent at odd angles, like it was made of shadows, not flesh. Liam's face on the screen shifted. He turned toward the figure. At 7:46 p.m., the figure seemed to reach toward the SUV, but then vanished, disappearing into thin air as if swallowed by the desert itself. The family's expressions tightened. Jeremy glanced into the rearview mirror, his jaw clenched. Melissa whispered something to the kids. Ava's small hand pressed against the window. Then the car slowly rolled forward, following the trail deeper into the dunes. After the video ended, Ridge sat back, processing. Who or what was that? Lyle asked, voice low. Ridge shook her head. Something that's been here a long time. Something tied to the land. She reviewed the footage frame by frame and noticed a faint shimmer near the figure, like static in a TV screen. They cross-referenced with local folklore and discovered reports dating back decades, sightings of a tall man or shadow walker haunting the desert at night, stalking travelers, especially families. One elder from the nearby Paiute tribe had told a reporter in the 1970s that this entity was a keeper of the forgotten, a spirit born from the desert's pain, feeding on lost souls. Meanwhile, a new development unsettled Ridge. Using thermal imaging at night near the excavation site, a local volunteer spotted something unusual, a faint, humanoid heat signature moving beneath the sand dunes. Too fluid to be human, but alive. Cameras caught it too. A shadowy form darting between dunes, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. The sightings matched the child's drawings and the strange footprints Donnie McCrae had reported years ago, but no one could catch it. Ridge felt the case slipping beyond the realm of reason, yet she couldn't let go. She returned to the burned circle at Crystal Pass alone at midnight, flashlight in hand. The desert was silent but for the soft crunch of sand beneath her boots. Then she heard it, a whisper, barely audible, a voice carried on the wind. "Come back." Her heart hammered. She turned sharply but saw nothing, only the vast emptiness of the desert stretching endlessly under the stars. The Bennetts had vanished here, and something was still waiting, something hungry. The desert wind howled as Detective Clara Ridge stood alone at the edge of the burned circle. The night sky above was ink black, scattered with cold stars. She felt the weight of 17 years pressing down on her chest. All the missing families, the drawings, the whispers, the empty SUV buried beneath 10 feet of sand, and the fifth figure, the one no one could explain. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the crumpled child's drawing, now faded and worn. 5 stick figures. The fifth shaded black, arms unnaturally long, almost reaching toward the others. A single tear slid down her cheek. She thought of Jeremy, Melissa, Ava, Liam, trapped somewhere beyond reason, and the message hidden beneath the scribbles. A warning. From the shadows behind her came a voice, soft, almost human, yet chilling. "You've come far." Clara spun around. A figure emerged from the darkness. Tall, thin, limbs crooked like the drawings. Its eyes glowed faintly, like embers. The desert had a face. "Why?" she whispered. The figure's voice was a hiss like wind over dry sand. "Because the desert takes what it is owed. Families who wander too far, who carry secrets, fears, and unanswered prayers." Clara steadied her breath. "You took them." "No," it replied. "I only return what was given. The fifth figure is the keeper, the shadow between worlds. It binds the lost and guides the willing." She remembered the drawings. The sixth figure, smaller, held by the fifth. A child, perhaps. "The choice is yours," the shadow said, stepping closer. "Walk away and forget, or step into the circle and join the others. To remember is to carry the desert's burden. To forget is to live, but never truly see." Clara looked down at the circle's scorched earth. Inside, silence. Inside, secrets. She thought of the families, their laughter, their fear, their hope. Her hand trembled as she stepped forward. The sand beneath her feet felt alive, pulsing softly. A whisper floated on the wind. "Welcome home." The next morning, search teams found the desert empty. No sign of Clara Ridge. No trace beyond a single child's drawing pinned to a rock near the burned circle. 5 stick figures, one shaded black. But this time a sixth figure, tiny and faint, stood beside them, waiting.